Hello, that's Car, and welcome to my review of Gangs of New York. Gangs of New York was released in 2002 and is directed by the great Martin Scorsese. We've been reviewing a lot of his films recently, and the film has a huge cast, so I'm going to try and name them off the top of my head as best as possible. The actors such as Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, Cameron Diaz, Brendan Gleeson, Jim Broadbent, John C. Reilly, Stephen Gray, and Henry Thomas, and Liam Neeson. And the film is a bit of a complicated plot, so I'm going to try and explain it as best as possible. The opening scene of the film takes place in 1846 in the streets of New York. And in the opening scene, we see Amsterdam Valley's father, played by Liam Neeson in the film. And by the way, this isn't a spoiler because it's the opening scene of the film. It's what sets up the rest of the film. Anyway, in the opening scene of the film, we see Amsterdam Valley's father, played by Liam Neeson, is killed by Bill the Butcher Cutting, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. He is killed. Young Amsterdam Valley manages to flee away before being captured by Bill the Butcher Cutting. So then we jump to 1862, and now Amsterdam Valley is growing up. He is now played by Leonardo DiCaprio. This is when Leonardo DiCaprio comes into it. Basically, Amsterdam Valley is returning to the streets of New York where his father died to go and get revenge on his father's death. But complications start to occur. For example, now Daniel Day-Lewis' character, Bill the Butcher Cutting, rules the streets of New York. Also, other complications start to occur. For example, with Cameron Diaz's character, Brendan Gleeson's character, Jim Broadbent's character, and so on and so on. And so for Amsterdam Valley, played by Leonardo DiCaprio here, gets his revenge on his father's death. He has to build a gang of people to go against Bill the Butcher Cutting. However, everything doesn't go as it seems, and it isn't as simple as it sounds. Quite a lot of things happen in the lead up to the final act of the film. And that's the basic part of the film. I missed out a couple of things that happened. For example, John C. Reilly's character's got quite a bit of a part to play in the film. Brendan Gleeson's character's got quite a bit of a part to play. And there's loads of other characters that come in and out of the film. For example, Henry Thomas got a bit of a part to play, and Stephen Graham as well. It's nice to see Stephen Graham in something. I would like to see Stephen Graham in something. So yeah, all these characters have a part to play, but that's the general plot of the film. Amsterdam Valley is trying to get revenge on his father's death, and his father was killed by Bill the Butcher Cutting, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. And this is not the Scorsese film I expected. If you've watched my channel recently, you know that I've been reviewing quite a few Scorsese films. Casino, Mean Street, and Goodfellas. They're all gangster films. So I thought that they would be similar to this film, because this film is called Gangs of New York. You know, it's in the name, Gangs of New York. So I thought they'd be similar. I was wrong, and not necessarily in a bad way though. One of the ways that they are very different is simply through the time that this film is set. This film is set in the 1800s, largely in 1862. And you really do feel that. Honestly, the costume design on some of these actors is incredible. The makeup on some of these actors is incredible. You really do feel just in the opening scene that this film is set in the 1800s. Honestly, the set pieces are absolutely incredible, this film. The set design, you really do feel like you're watching a film taking place in the 1800s. Performances are great from everyone, which is kind of expected. Daniel Day-Lewis is absolutely incredible in the film. One scene, in particular, he's delivering this large monologue, large line of dialogue. Camera just stays in it. It doesn't cut, it just stays in him. And he's just delivering this large monologue. And it's such a captivating scene. And that's just through Daniel Day-Lewis' performance. He's honestly great in the film. He plays a very evil character. He is the antagonist in the film, but he is great in the film. Honestly, his performance is so captivating. It's so fantastic. And just that one scene when he's delivering that long line of that long monologue, it works so well because the camera just stays on him. It's actually one of my favourite scenes in the film, and nothing was happening, really, apart from him just delivering this monologue. And it's an absolutely fantastic scene. Like I said, the performances are great. DiCaprio's great in the film, which is expected. He's in a lot of his Scorsese films, I've noticed that. He's absolutely great in the film, which is expected. Also, Jim Broadbent's great in the film. Brendan Gleeson's great in the film. Cameron Diaz was great in the film as well. I heard some things about her performance maybe being a bit still and being a bit, you know, not as good as the others. Yeah, it isn't as good as these other actors, but bear in mind, these other actors are Daniel Day-Lewis, DiCaprio, and so on and so on and so on. But she's still good in the film, don't be wrong. I did like her performance, just not as good as some of the other actors in the film. John C. Reilly's great in the film, Stephen Graham's great in the film. I was happy to see Stephen Graham in there. And Liam Neeson's great in the film, even in the short time he was in the film. And interesting fact, by the way, I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say it now anyway. Basically, in the opening scene of the film, we see Liam Neeson. He's got a weapon. He's about to fight Bill the Butcher Cutting, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. This is in the opening scene. He has his weapon. And by the way, I watched the interview with Scorsese when he was doing Press for the Irishman. Basically, he said he has his memento, which is the weapon that Liam Neeson has in the opening scene of the film. I was just thinking, wow, what a memento to have, because it's quite a weapon. But anyway, I just thought that was a little fun, interesting fact. But anyway, my biggest criticism in the film is that this film is almost 3 hours. And for a film that's almost 3 hours, for a film that's like 2 hours 50, it feels that length. And I hate to say that, but it does. That hasn't always been the case with Scorsese films, and it was a bit disappointing that I felt that. Take a look at other Scorsese films that, you know, about that length. Like, for example, Casino. Casino is just under 3 hours, but it does not feel that long. Casino feels about 2 hours and a half, even under that, really. Because that film is really fast paced, it's well crafted, each scene is really well done, and it doesn't feel that length. It feels long, but not nearly as long as it is. This film, it feels long, and is about as long as it is. It just, there were some parts of the film which started to feel a bit overlong. I reckon you could cut 20 minutes of the film and it'd still be exactly the same film. Not to say that, you know, the long scenes are bad, because it adds to the characterization of these characters, but just some parts of the film just felt a tad bit overlong, and that he didn't really need that in the grand scheme of things in this film. But don't get me wrong, overall I do feel this film needed to be about 2 hours and a half to fully tell this story. But I think you could have just cut about 20 minutes of film and it'd be exactly the same. That's not to say the film is bad, it's just saying that it felt about as long as it was. And I haven't always felt that with Scorsese films. Even Goodfellas, which was 2 hours and a half, felt about 2 hours. Anyway, that's not to say the film is bad, because there's still a lot of perks to the film. For example, the score. The musical score for this film is done by Howard Shore. Howard Shore did the music for the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. And the music for this film sounds a bit similar to the Lord of the Rings theme, I'm not gonna lie. That's not to say it's bad, I really like the score for this film. It felt like a score which suited this film really well. The score was done really well. I really like Howard's score for this film. It was just a bit similar to the Lord of the Rings theme. I was like, oh, it's done by the same composer. Now I get it. But yeah, the score for this film is great. Also, the action sequences in the film are great. The third act of the film is like the big payoff. Honestly, the third act of the film is absolutely fantastic. It had a lot of similarities with the opening scene in the film, and I can see why now. I kind of like that whole idea. But yeah, the opening scene in the film and the third act of the film have really well shot action sequences. It's a really well made film. And there are a lot of moments in the film like, which I was like, I can tell it's directed by Scorsese, but there were a couple of moments in the film that were just a bit, it felt a bit overlong and not as fast paced as I expected it to be. It wasn't the film I expected. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just felt a tad bit overlong, if I'm being completely honest. That's still not to say the film is bad. Honestly, everyone's giving off the A game in the film. I just think they could have cut 20 minutes out and it would have been exactly the same film. But it's still really good. There's a lot of intense sequences in the film that I enjoyed a lot, especially one scene where Daniel Day-Lewis's character, Bill the Butcher Cussing, finds something out about Amsterdam Valiant, you know, played by DiCaprio, finds something out about his character, and there's one very intense scene which I enjoyed quite a lot in the film. I thought the film built up to that scene, and when that scene finally came, I was like, yeah. He delivered. All in all, I think this is an absolutely fantastic film. A tad bit overlong, and not the film I expected, but at the same time, that's not a bad thing. All in all, I'm going to say that Gangs of New York, I think I'm going to rate it an 8 out of 10. 8.0 out of 10 if I'm being precise. It's really well made. Honestly, I did feel like I was watching a film in the 1800s. Performances are great, the action sequences are great, some very intense sequences as well. Just a couple of scenes felt like they could have been cut. A couple of moments in the film just felt a bit overlong. I did have a really enjoyable time watching this film, and I'd happily watch the film again. Not my favourite Scorsese film, but definitely not the worst I've seen. I did actually prefer Over Main Street. So, all in all, I'm going to say that Gangs of New York is an 8 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of Gangs of New York? Do you love it, do you hate it? Or have you just not watched it? And if not, why not? Please do comment below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more both film and TVs coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.